Number 10. Red Hood. After Jason Todd as Robin was killed at the hands of Joker, he returned at first as a semi-villain and later as an anti-hero. He was revived by Talia al Ghul, trained by the League of Assassins, and later also by Dukra of the All-Caste. When he returned to Gotham, he had his own moral code in place when it came to his ideals as a vigilante. Killing those he deemed guilty was no longer something off of the table for Jason. He did what it took. He wasn't going to let anything get in the way of his brutal fight for justice in Gotham. While many other heroes usually have a moral code that keeps them in check, Red Hood does not. And while he is just a mortal human, like his original mentor Batman, Red Hood should not be considered weaker because of this. He has a longevity of life that could even be considered superhuman due to his exposure to the Lazarus Pits. He is highly trained and skilled when it comes to unarmed and armed combat, a master with the sword, a weapons expert when it comes to firearms, and a skilled marksman. One of the best. He also has extensive knowledge when it comes to explosives and just has a brilliant mind in general. Number 9. Frankencastle. Even when Frank was alive, he didn't hold much back. The Punisher is known for being a ruthless character with only his life to lose, and even then Frank likely wouldn't seem to mind if he did lose his life. After losing his family, who were shot down for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, he has become obsessed with revenge and a pursuit for justice. Aiming to take the matter of judgment into his own hands, Punisher punishes those mercilessly that he believes are guilty of crimes and evil deeds. When he was killed by Daken, he returned as Frankencastle, resurrected by Morbius. At that point, he truly had nothing left to lose, not even his life, which had, already technically been taken from him. He was also considered more powerful, as he was an undead creature who is also part cyborg, part many other things. Number 8. Drax the Destroyer. Drax was once Arthur Douglas, a man who lost his family at the hands of Thanos. He was revived and rebuilt as the humanoid being known as Drax the Destroyer, crafted by Kronos and Mentor for the sole purpose of destroying Mentor's son, Thanos. While Arthur's physical form is gone, his spirit lives on inside of Drax, no longer having his family, although his daughter Heather did survive, but also kind of became a different person, growing up on Titan and becoming the hero known as Moondragon. Drax was built to destroy, with nothing holding him back. Alone, Drax is often only successful in thwarting Thanos' plots, but over time, Drax became friends with the Avengers, and his former, kinda still daughter, Moondragon. It was with teammates like this that he would succeed in destroying Thanos, though because this is comics, Thanos always returns, meaning Drax's mission is never really complete, and so he continues on, his sole purpose usually to defeat the Mad Titan. Drax of course has killed many of those who oppose him, but at one point he actually found himself tired of the violence and did eventually retire. Still, whenever he's called to battle, he holds nothing back. Number 7. John Constantine. This is in essence what makes Constantine such an anti-hero in a lot of ways. Constantine is often willing to pay high prices to ensure he gets what he wants and take routes that most heroes would not go down. He's a risk taker, and to him no risk is too great. He gambled with all of the souls of London in Rebirth when attempting to rid himself of the curse that prevented him from being in his homeland. He's bargained with his own life countless times, and he actually even ended up dying himself when one of these bargains was at its end. Of course, this is John Constantine, the man with a million tricks up his sleeves, so you know that death for him at least is rarely permanent, and that no matter what he gambles, the odds are usually in his favor. Number 6. Homelander. Homelander is the leader of the Seven from the Garth Ennis comic book series The Boys, Out of Dynamite, and the hit Amazon Prime show. Whether we're looking at either, there isn't a lot that Homer values enough to really hold him back. The most we see that keeps him in check when it comes to how he uses and wields his power is his public image in season 2 of the show, which introduces a social media savvy and female version of the character Stormfront to act as Homelander's foil and frenemy and other stuff. Season 2 introduces the idea of social media as this restraint on supes who constantly risk being caught on camera when misbehaving. However, Homelander has even contemplated simply giving in to his frustration when dealing with this issue, and just murdering basically all the people who oppose him, which shows you somewhat what he really thinks when it comes to the value of the public's opinion on him. Number 5. Injustice Superman. Normally Superman is seen as one of the best of the best, despite being from another world and being completely invulnerable and godlike when it comes to his power set. He is also usually seen as a very grounded hero. A lot of his humanity he owes to the people he grew up around, his parents, the Kents, and of course his girlfriend and often wife, Lois Lane. When Superman loses those he loves, it can put him in a very dark and dangerous place, causing him to become unhinged and see the world differently. Such is the case in Injustice. After being tricked into killing his wife and unborn baby by the Joker and Harley Quinn, he rages. Furious at what he has done, he turns against the Joker who caused him to needlessly kill his loved ones. And thus we see Superman turn dark and the beginnings of him becoming a villain who rules the earth and puts an end to crime by making the people and his fellow heroes fear him. Number 4. Sentry. One of the few things Robert Reynolds had left when it came to his humanity was his attachment to other heroes, his friends, and his wife. However, after being forced into making everyone forget him to protect them from his own evil split persona, the Void, and after the death of his wife, he doesn't have much left to keep him going in a heroic direction. Bob ends up manipulated by Norman Osborn and convinced to join his Dark Avengers team, where he commits a bunch of questionable acts, all at the behest of Osborn and his own teammates. The frightening thing is that the Sentry often believes he is acting heroically even when he's not, his mental state and moral compass both being somewhat askew. Sentry is as powerful as 1 million exploding suns, which is pretty scary to think about when you know how unhinged he becomes. Number 3. Batman. A very specific iteration of Batman, that is. This Batman hails from the dark multiverse where it is very easy for heroes to go down a much darker path. What makes Batman usually so human is that despite being a brilliant and calculating man, his grief often connects him to his city, humanity, the people in Gotham, and those around him. His ability to suffer, in a sense, is what makes him human. I mean, in a sense, that's what kind of makes all of us human, right? So what happens when we remove his ability to feel? That is what we explore in this story from Earth -44. Here Batman loses Alfred and finds it so hard to go on without him that he asks Cyborg to help him make an AI version of his deceased family friend, father figure, and butler. He insists that he simply needs the AI to help him run the household and do superhero tasks that he himself cannot complete. Cyborg agrees to help Bruce, but what they end up creating is something much more dark. The Alfred protocol they construct is programmed to protect Batman, and it is this bit of programming that inspires it to fix Batman, giving him a new technological cyborg body and removing his ability to feel pain, fear, or grief. Without being able to feel emotion, Batman becomes the murder machine, a villain who saw every living human as a threat, and so basically killed them all, including his closest friends and colleagues on the Justice League. Number 2. Jean Grey. Jean Grey has a lot to lose, but Jean Grey is the Dark Phoenix? Not so much. When Jean as Phoenix turns dark, there's almost nothing she won't risk to get her way. A corrupted force, Jean even knew that she needed to end her life in order to ensure that people were protected from her sheer and awesome power, and it's believed that she orchestrated her own demise during the end of the Phoenix Saga for this reason. Of course, we later learned this wasn't entirely Jean, but to simplify things, we're just going to ignore the confusing implications of that retcon and just accept that Phoenix and Dark Phoenix were both enough of Jean Grey for us to acknowledge her as such. Dark Phoenix would endanger and kill millions without any consideration of life. When Mastermind thought he'd had her ensorcelled and ensnared the X-Men right in front of her, Dark Phoenix awoke and reminded him just how little regard for life she has, giving him a glimpse of her power and thereby basically turning his mind to mush, driving him wildly insane. He would stay that way for quite a while. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan, in essence, lost his humanity over time. The longer he had his powers, which allow him to manipulate matter and even, to an extent, alter reality, caused him to become detached from humans, seeing himself as superior to them, and their problems as insignificant. John Osterman now pretty much ceases to exist in the way that he used to exist, and in his place is really just Dr. Manhattan. It is rare that Manhattan as such will even get involved in the affairs of others. He prefers to live in seclusion, doing his own thing. He's killed countless people, including his colleague Rorschach, and doesn't seem to feel much regret or remorse for the killings he has committed or the ones he's let happen. Number 10. Daredevil. Daredevil might have a lot to lose normally. His neighborhood, his reputation as a lawyer, the countless girlfriends he's had, and in most cases lost due to them dying. However, there is one point when he didn't really have any of this, not even his costume. When Kingpin took it all away from him during the story Born Again, Matt Murdock got to show the stuff that he was really made of. In the end, although there are a lot of things Daredevil personally does care about, to him none of these things really matter on the same level as one very important thing. Matt Murdock would put everything on the line when it comes to stopping criminals and protecting the borough of Hell's Kitchen. He would even risk sacrificing his own secret identity, which has been revealed multiple times to villains and the public alike. The other thing you can bet is that while Matt might not be at the same power level as other heroes, he is one hero who will always get back up, no matter what has been taken from him. Number 9. Thomas Wayne. Thomas Wayne as Batman from the Flashpoint timeline truly has nothing left to lose. Those he cared most about protecting are lost to him. His son Bruce, murdered during an alleyway robbery gone wrong. His wife Martha was driven mad in grief and turned into the maniacal villain known as the Joker. It's surprising that Thomas even finds anything to keep him going, but at the end of the day, protecting the innocent people of Gotham is the only way he can seem to find solace, and there is nothing that would stop him from doing so, not even his wife and his now nemesis Martha Wayne. And in fact, when he sees a way of reversing what has befallen him and helping to fix the timeline, there is absolutely nothing that would stop Thomas from doing so, even if it means hurting his only son surviving in the main continuity. Sad. Number 8. Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones did not have much to lose after pretty much everything was taken from her. After being freed from the Purple Man aka Kilgrave's hold on her, Jessica Jones began to spiral. She retired from being the superhero known as Jewel and opened up her own private investigation agency. She operated and owned it, and so she only had to play by her own rules, which suited Jessica just fine, as she tried to find herself again and figure out just who she was and who she wanted to become. Jessica Jones is of course not just powerful physically, but is also powerful when it comes to her investigative skills and mind. Number 7. Nova. The Nova we're talking about this time around is Richard Rider. This version of Nova sacrificed everything to ensure the safety of the universe. He was trapped in the negative zone, took on the Sentry and the Cancerverse, originally being stranded there. No one ever came for him, and he gave his life to put a stop to the invasion of the Cancerverse. Later on, he was resurrected, and now he just flies through space, not much having anything left to care for, but trying to protect the universe all the same, giving it everything he's got. And incoming, we see him update Night Thrasher on this situation while taking out a massive starship. Nova's scary. Number 6. Hank Pym. The whole reason that Hank Pym as Ant-Man or any of his other superhero or even supervillain personas gets into so much trouble is because he doesn't fixate on what he has to lose. He doesn't actually even really think about what he has to lose. He doesn't get hung up on the potential consequences of his actions. See where I'm going here? Hank himself is not a naturally superpowered being, but it is his brilliant intellect that has allowed him to gain superpowers, like the ability to change size as Ant-Man. And it is his intellect that has also allowed him to create great and terrible creatures and devices like Ultron. Number 5. John Stewart. When John Stewart makes mistakes, he falls hard, and it's both while fighting against those who are unjust and in failing to save those who are deemed innocent that he usually can be seen as a man with nothing to lose. In fact, that has kind of been John Stewart's whole arc as a character. He's a man who believes fully in his own strength and gives everything his all, but his arrogance can also be his biggest flaw as a character. In Cosmic Odyssey, we see what happens when John goes in, guns, or I guess ring a-blazing. He is attempting to save the planet known as Xanshi from a fatal explosion. However, due to his overconfidence in himself, he underestimates the force he is coming up against, which leads to the planet's destruction. This almost leaves John with consequences he cannot live with when he contemplates taking his own life, but ultimately decides he's stronger than that. John Stewart's confidence makes him an unstoppable powerhouse, but it also puts him into binds too. Over time, he has learned to be more considerate, but when he started out as a hero, his actions made you feel as though he truly felt he just had nothing to lose. Both a pro and a con. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is traditionally known for being more of a villain, but he has been a hero before, and even when he's acting acting heroically, he doesn't pull many of his punches. He gives it his all and risks everything to achieve his goal. At one point, when he was operating under the codename Kid Vulcan, he was sent as part of a rescue team which Charles Xavier selected to save the X-Men team from Krakoa. This was before the dawn of X-Line was a thing, and so this was before the island of Krakoa was seen as a friendly, cooperative mutant/island ally. Vulcan went in and managed to rescue his brother Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and even seemingly died doing so. Now, in reality, Vulcan only appeared to die, but was later saved by the mutant Darwin's survival abilities. Following that, Vulcan, aka Gabriel Summers, would become pretty villainous in the comics, but at the point that we're talking about here in the comics, he would have been seen as a hero. Number 3. Lois Lane. You might be thinking, since when is Lois Lane super powerful, Amanda? Well, let me tell you, Lois doesn't actually need powers to be considered a powerful and deadly woman and opponent. Thank you very much. Though in this case, she did actually have superpowers. This version of Lois we are talking about here is one who became Superwoman following the death of Superman in the Tales from the Dark Multiverse comic, Death of Superman. Following Clark's death, Lois was beside herself with grief. When she learned the Eradicator had come to Earth but failed in reviving Kal-El, she offered herself as a vessel for the power it held and could bestow upon her. Lois then became a sort of dark superwoman, one who would not be stopped. Now insanely powerful, fueled by grief and rage, and without Clark to ground her, Lois set out to make the world a better place, in essence by brutally punishing anyone she deemed guilty, making the choice of peace for people as opposed to giving them that option. She brutally killed Lex Luthor and even stopped anyone who got in her way, including Batman. Number 2. Immortal Hulk. After Hulk's death and rebirth, Hulk has his own problems but finds himself basically being on the run by often what feels like the entire Marvel universe. This is a version of the Hulk who is insanely powerful. This is also a version of the Hulk who cannot die. I think you see where I'm going here. Bruce Banner, of course, was still in there, but it would later be revealed the Devil Hulk had taken hold, which sounds about as scary as it is, as Devil Hulk believed the best course of action was to put an end to humanity. And even with Bruce Banner still being a part of the Hulk, Bruce was often lonely as the Immortal Hulk, having not many people to feel like he could turn to. He even lost his close friend Rick Jones, who was later revealed was turned into a monster designed to destroy the Hulk. Wow, poor Rick Jones. Number 1. Gamora. When Gamora set out on a mission to revive a lost fragment of her soul and rebalance the soul gem, she ended up becoming a villain to most of her friends and also the entire universe, pretty much. Killing Thanos, his dying words to her were about how he felt she was about to complete his own Requiem. Despite not agreeing, she was inspired by his words and took the name Requiem for herself. Once she had the soul gem in her possession and she had reconnected with the fragment of her soul that was trapped within it, becoming whole once more, she then needed to appease the gem's hunger, and so she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones and fed those merged souls to the Soul Stone, turning this new world known as Warp World into a pocket dimension. There was nothing that would get in Gamora's way on this mission, and her willpower and the Infinity Stones made her, well, virtually unstoppable. It was only alternate versions of the heroes wielding their own Infinity Stone copies who had escaped Warp World that were able to even challenge her. And fortunately they did stop her. So she was unstoppable until, like most people, she was stopped.
Number 10. ROBOTMAN. Clifford Steele was a daredevil race car driver before he was in a horrible accident that completely destroyed his body. Dr. Niles Calder volunteered his services, and although his body was beyond repair, Calder was able to save Cliff's brain, putting it into a robotic body. When Cliff woke up, the stress of the transformation, as well as some faulty wiring, made him go cuckoo banana pants and go on a rampage through the city. Calder eventually calmed him down and fixed the wiring. Cliff's life as he knew it was over, and with nothing else to do, he took up Calder's offer to join the Doom Patrol as ROBOTMAN. He is often depressed at the state of his life, and although he has formed relationships with his teammates, he doesn't really have a life outside of the team, and doesn't have anything to lose, as even when the team died in Doom Patrol number 121, he was able to simply replace his robot body. Even when his brain was destroyed, a backup of his mind was used to create another ROBOTMAN. Number 9. HAWKMAN and HAWKGIRL. When the Egyptian prince, Prince Khufu, and his love, Chaera, were killed by the priest, Hath-Set, the knife he used bonded their souls together as it was made of an alien element known as nth metal. As a result, Khufu and Chaera are fated to be reincarnated throughout history, always coming together and usually being killed by the reincarnated Hath-Set. Some of their lives include Brian Kent, also known as the Silent Knight, and his lover, Lady Celia Penbrook, a pair of gunfighters in the Old West named Nighthawk and Cinnamon, and Pinkerton detectives James Wright and Sheila Carr. In their most recent lives, they are Carter Hall and Shara Sanders, also known as HAWKMAN and HAWKGIRL. The two fight crime together and obviously do their best not to die, but even when they do, they are safe in the knowledge that they will always return to each other in their next lives. So for them, death is kinda like waiting to respawn in a Call of Duty match, making the stakes significantly lower than it would be for you or I. Number 8. Shadowlands Daredevil. When Daredevil became the leader of the evil group called The Hand, he became more ruthless than we had ever seen him before. He had just divorced his wife Milla and had been fired by his partner Foggy Nelson and had nothing left outside of his Daredevil life. When Bullseye, on the orders of Norman Osborn, blew up a tenement, Daredevil broke his long-standing no-kill rule and ended the assassin before building a fortress for his associates over the ruins of the apartment that he called Shadowland, the happiest place on Earth. Of course, it later turned out that he was possessed by a demon and was not in full control of his actions, and he went on to be a villain for a while, fighting multiple heroes when they tried to stop him. But for a brief window there, Daredevil really did have nothing to lose and was still a hero. Number 7. The Hulk. When Bruce Banner's Gamma Bomb test went wrong, he was cursed with the ability to transform into the Incredible Hulk whenever he became angry or outraged. The Hulk is often despised by the people of Earth despite all the good he's done as a member of the Avengers and as a solo superhero, likely because of his tendency to smash everything in sight when he hulks out. This has resulted in a Bruce Banner who is often on the run with nothing to lose. For example, at the beginning of the Immortal Hulk series, he is presumed dead and has nothing. He is surviving by begging and stealing what he can and owns nothing, not even the clothes on his back, which he always loses when he transforms into the Hulk. Banner is often written as not really caring if he lives or dies, as death would be a sweet release from his tragic life. However, he ranks pretty low on this list as he does have some things to lose. Despite their differences, he does have friends on the Avengers, as well as people he cares about like Rick Jones and Betty Ross, although he has lost them only for them to return in the past. So, while he may feel he has nothing to lose, there are always new depths of loss that Banner can discover. Number 6. Martian Manhunter. John Jones is from the planet Mars, where he worked as a police officer, or as they called it on Mars, Manhunters. He had a wife and a daughter, and things were pretty good for old John. However, his evil twin devised a virus to destroy all of Martian kind that transferred from Martian to Martian whenever they used their psionic powers, causing them to spontaneously combust. John was able to avoid infection, but had to watch as his family was engulfed in flames. Not long afterwards, a scientist accidentally transported John to Earth, where he shapeshifted into human form and became a detective once again, as well as the superhero Martian Manhunter. John has nothing to lose as he has already lost his family, his friends, and, well, everyone else on his home planet, and is trapped on an alien world. Considering everything he's been through, he's a pretty well-adjusted hero, but he does have the advantage of not having anything that he needs to prioritize over his mission. Number 5. Jonah Hex. Some of you might be thinking that Jonah Hex doesn't count as a superhero as he's just a cowboy. I'd counter that he fought in the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and if that doesn't earn him a spot, nothing does. Jonah was sold by his father into indentured servitude to an Apache tribe when he was 13, before eventually saving the chief's life and being adopted as his son. The chief's other son was in love with the same woman, so he betrayed Hex and left him for dead. He joined the Confederate Army during the American Civil War, but eventually remembered that he had not enjoyed being a slave, and that it was kinda dumb for him to be fighting for that cause, and so he surrendered himself to the Union Army. He was branded a traitor by the Confederates, but as a former member of their army, was also considered a traitor by the Union. You know, for the whole trying to separate thing. He found his old tribe where he entered trial by combat against his adopted brother, but he broke the rules and killed him with a knife after his tomahawk broke in an act of sabotage. As a result, he was disfigured with a burning tomahawk and exiled. He would eventually cross paths with the tribe again, which resulted in the chief trying to kill him, but being stopped by the woman Hex loved, who died in the process. Hex killed the chief, and realizing that he was now despised by everyone who ever knew him, he became a ruthless bounty hunter who was often shunned due to his horrific appearance. Number 4. Dead Man. Boston Brand was a daring trapeze artist until one day, during his show, he was shot and killed by persons unknown. Due to him being well liked by the Hindu goddess Rama Krishna, Brand was allowed to stay on Earth as a ghost so that he could help protect the innocents and track down his murderer and bring them to justice. He has the power to enter the living and possess and control their bodies. He was a very solitary person while alive, and therefore didn't have many people to mourn him, and as he is already dead, he doesn't really have much to lose. Number 3. Spawn. Al Francis Simmons was a mercenary for the US government before being killed by one of his fellow mercenaries. Due to all the murder, Al was sent to hell, but he made a deal with a demon named Malebolgia and agreed to join Hell's army as a Hellspawn. He was sent back to Earth, where he discovered that 5 years had passed and that his wife had remarried and started a new life with his best friend. So, he became Spawn and spent the rest of his time brutally dispatching violent criminals and fighting evil demons. Like Dead Man, he is technically dead and therefore doesn't really have anything left to lose. Number 2. Rorschach. Walter Kovacs had a pretty rough upbringing, being raised by a less than ideal mother before being made a ward of the state. He was bullied there too, although through his schooling it was discovered that he was an extremely intelligent boy with a real skill at boxing. When he grew up, he became a garment worker until a murder of a woman who was killed in front of several witnesses who didn't even try to help her inspired him to become a costumed crime fighter. He used a special fabric that changed with temperature and pressure to make a mask for himself and became Rorschach. Rorschach was a decently respected hero, even working with other heroes as a member of the hero team, the Crime Busters, but after seeing a particularly cruel and brutal crime scene, his mind snapped and the Walter Kovacs side of him died, leaving only the brutal Rorschach. He chose to live in squalor with no real friends aside from a strained relationship with Night Owl 2, and only coming out of his home unmasked to collect intel while holding a doomsday sign. When he and the other heroes uncovered Adrian Veidt's plan to attack Manhattan and Moscow with a giant squid monster in order to try and end the Cold War, he was the only member of the team who didn't choose to keep the truth a secret, saying, "Never compromise." He was killed by Dr. Manhattan, but his journal was sent to a dodgy newspaper, leaving the possibility for the truth to be uncovered. He has nothing to lose, and that's how he likes it, because he's an unhinged maniac. Number 1. The Punisher. Frank Castle was a Marine whose family was killed in the crossfire of a mob attack. Frank survived but was deeply traumatized, and when his family's killers went free due to police corruption, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He became the Punisher and began using his military skills and tactics to wage a brutal one-man war on crime. His extreme methods have brought him into frequent conflict with both the villains and the heroes of the Marvel Universe. Frank has no personal life to speak of, and tends to avoid friendships in general, choosing to spend all of his time plotting, hunting, or killing criminals. He is a lunatic with nothing to lose, but fortunately for the good people of the Marvel Universe, all of his insane fury is directed at the criminals of the city.